that time of year again, a time for lists. We love lists! And it's the list of both my top 10 favourite movies of the year and my top 10 least favourite of the year. So this one we're going to be doing my favourite movies, and I'll do another video for my least favourite. So I always seem to slightly approach this in a different way every kind of year I do this. So this year, I'm not talking the movies that I think are critically the best necessarily. These are the movies that I've just enjoyed the most. So some of these ratings that you would have seen in the individual reviews might be a little kind of different to the kind of the order here, but I'm purely basing it on my enjoyment level of the films rather than my critical analysis, which might actually be a little bit different, because I do like some kind of like bad movies, if that makes sense. There are movies that I rate higher, but I personally don't really enjoy, but I kind of appreciate their art, so to speak. So, and it's going to be the same with the negative ones. So let's start off, okay? So number 10, my 10th favourite movie of the year, I would say, is Terrifier 2. Now, I'm not a huge slasher fan, but I think Art the Clown is a great addition to the kind of the pantheon of horror characters, of which there haven't been many recently. It seems to be, you know, I would say Ghostface is probably the most recent one outside of this. But he's, you know, he's a great kind of character, and obviously coming from more of an independent kind of background as well. And obviously the signature of the Terrifier series is his extreme violence. So I do feel it carves out a little bit of an originality compared to some of the other kind of like horror characters, shall we say. And yeah, I mean, I didn't 100% love the movie, but I could have enjoyed it, and I would certainly be, you know, wanting to see Terrifier 3 pretty soon. But I think Art the Clown is a good character. The story was good, I enjoyed it. Check out my review for all of these. I'll basically see my, you know, my more thoughts in detail, so to speak. Anyway, number 9. Number 9 is the most recent movie I have seen on this list, and that is Satan's Slaves 2, Communion. This is an Indonesian movie, which is a sequel to a 2017 movie, Satan's Slave, or at least that is the English translation. And this is a haunted house movie, though I thought the second one really did show some very articulate filmmaking, skillful filmmaking, with some kind of like some good set pieces, some good scares, well acted and kind of well defined characters. You know, it didn't blow my socks off necessarily, but I think it was a solid, good movie. You know, I gave it a 7 out of 10. But I quite enjoyed it. I enjoyed the filmmaking skill on display here by director Joko Anwar. Number 8 is an Australian movie called The Possessed. Now, there's probably loads of movies called The Possessed or The Possession, etc., etc. This one is an Australian movie, actually technically a 2021 movie in kind of its kind of festival run, but on general release in 2022. And this is kind of like a horror comedy to a certain degree, but it kind of is I would liken it to a little bit to Ghostbusters, because it's kind of like what Ghostbusters did for ghosts, this kind of does for demons, with a kind of a blue colour bunch of exorcists basically going around facing off various kind of demons with added ferocity as the kind of the movie progresses. A fun movie with great practical effects, and yeah, I enjoyed it quite a lot. Number 7 is The Sadness, an Asian zombie-esque horror film, and again this one's pretty brutal, a little bit like Terrifier, where we have this kind of viral kind of outbreak which essentially turns people into zombie kind of like killers that kind of have somewhat kind of changed physically, but they're kind of like they're living out all their kind of worst impulses, and it's a pretty tense horror thriller with some extreme violence, and you know, I enjoyed it quite a bit. Number 6 is Valley of the Dead, which is a Spanish zombie movie that takes place in the Spanish Civil War, and I really enjoyed it. I mean, I was going to kind of, before watching this one, I was kind of ready to dismiss it as another zombie movie, but I really enjoyed it, to be honest with you. The kind of the period setting with the kind of like this quite large scale production, I thought, and some kind of good characters and some, you know, some great kind of zombie action. I mean, zombie movies have been done to death, so they really have to kind of like, you know, get me to buy it and to really enjoy it, and this one did. Number 5 is probably the most mainstream movie on this list, and that is Violent Night, a movie what I recently saw, and of course I'm sure most people know, that stars David Harbour and is essentially Die Hard, but with actually kind of Santa. Number 4, this might be a little controversial because I'm sure most people kind of dismiss this as somewhat of a, you know, throwaway B movie, but number 4 is Sharkbait, which is also known as Jet Ski. I really enjoyed this movie. I mean, it's not up there with, you know, Jaws and, you know, 47 Meters Down and things like that, but for a kind of a more of a fun, kind of cheesy sort of action shark horror movie, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was well done with some pretty kind of like good kills, and with this movie they don't kind of, you know, pan the camera away, which tends to be a trend from a lot of these. So that one I quite enjoy, but I can appreciate that one maybe is not for everyone. Number 3 is Two Witches, which was a movie which is kind of an anthology. It actually has 2 stories, so they kind of still have a reasonable length to them, and there is some interconnected tissue with them. Clearly, obviously, about witches, and I just enjoyed the kind of strange kind of storyline. I thought these witches seemed genuinely kind of dangerous, and it was an interesting character study because in the first segment we was kind of on the point of view of our victims, and the second story was from the point of view of the witch, but different kind of stories and things like that. But now I like the connective tissue, I like the kind of the world building this movie did, and it's obviously setting up a sequel, so I guess that'll be 3 witches, I guess we'll see. So yeah, that is Two Witches. Number 2, this is Deadstream, and this was quite an original movie in a lot of ways because it was a found footage horror comedy, which I don't recall ever seeing before. But the movie was still a legitimately good horror film with some genuinely kind of like quite creepy moments, quite good jump scares, good atmosphere, but some genuinely funny moments as well. I mean, it's really rare for, I think, a horror comedy to land on both the horror and the comedy elements. I mean, admittedly, I think some of the comedy elements maybe have undercut some of the genuine terror that this movie might have had otherwise, but it still did really well in both those categories, and I enjoyed it in both fronts. Therefore, it is my number 2. And my number 1 movie of the year is, again, it's one that came out on the festival circuit, I believe, in 2021, more general release in 2022, and that is The Exorcism of God. We've seen possession movies a bunch of times. There's loads of them out there. This one, to me, was a lot more visceral. The possession seemed more genuinely kind of dangerous. I was fully invested in the characters and the kind of the storyline and kind of where it was going to go. And I think the twist that this movie has, a little bit of a different kind of like idea, what the kind of that relates to the title, I thought was very clever. And, you know, it was particularly a well-shot movie as well. So I really, really enjoyed that one. So all these movies, you know, like I said, I very much enjoyed. If you haven't seen any, I would recommend checking them out, because I'm sure the majority of people that watch this channel would probably like most of these movies. Have you any thoughts? Are any of these movies that you did not like, or any movies that you loved like myself? Please do let me know. And be sure to check out my other list, which is not so positive.